Shalom, we're back, and we're going to learn some halachot of Pesach as the holy night is approaching. And it's funny, as the Jewish world approaches Pesach, you see everybody's anxiety level rises a little bit. It's an interesting idea. Why do we get anxious as Pesach gets closer? Is it the cleaning? Is it the stress? Is it the need for more money? Is it the all the different things that are happening at once with the family? It's a very interesting thing to watch, because Pesach is this great joyous festival that Hashem has given us, and yet we're getting more and more anxious and nervous, and you see people getting upset with themselves and with each other and with things that we can't even control. But I think to understand that better, our soul, our unconscious part of us, knows that a great thing is coming, that a new year is starting. The new year of the Jewish people begins on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which happened a few days ago, but it reaches the peak on the night of Seder, because it's really the formation of the Jewish people and their identity of the people that God took out of Egypt. Now, a lot of people left a lot of countries when they were oppressed. They were enslaved. But did it ever happen that 3 million left at once? Think about that. Okay. Now, we learned yesterday about this beautiful idea of making our own matzah Erev Pesach. And we know that wheat, a wheat berry that is crushed, is going into flour, which becomes dough. It's very easily can machmitz. It can easily rise and become leaven, and become a sort to even have in your boundary or in your house or anywhere near you, much less in your mouth or your stomach. And this wheat berry, the Ben Ish Chai tells us, if you find one in your dough, which is a possibility, if the berry is already cracked open, it's too late. But if the berry is whole, you can pluck it out of the dough, and the dough is still good. And he says in an interesting halachic term that's it's nice to know, Yikach min hamatzah kedei netilat makom. In other words, you take the berry around with a little bit of the dough around it in order that you remove that potential for the matzah to become hametz, which it will once it's baked. Okay, again, if you have a chance to make matzah Erev Pesach, I highly recommend it at least once. Now, if you're a baker, I think you know what I'm talking about. And if, of course, the berry, if it's already broken open, then the whole matzah has to be removed. Okay. And it's interesting that wheat, we spoke yesterday that the lashon wheat, chita, is lashon chatat. And that wheat itself is this fascinating substance that gives humanity satisfaction and relief from hunger. In terms of eating something that's going to most quickly satisfy you from hunger, it's wheat. And so it's interesting that this very substance that gives us so much satisfaction is the object of so much attention on Pesach. Because that very satisfaction is a dangerous thing too. Because when human beings become too satisfied, bad things start to happen. Okay. And of course, the wheat is the symbol of this puffing, is the puffing of the ego, the puffing of me, I, myself, mine, all these ideas that that we are kind of stuck with through life. But nonetheless, that is our challenge to be here. To be godly in this world means to take that ego and to turn it into a godly portion, to turn it into something that is much greater than the limited self that we live in down here. Okay. The Ben Ish Chai goes on to tell us, Asor la'asot melacha be'erev Pesach mechatzot umala. From the midday, Erev Pesach, we're not supposed to do any work. Of course, work, the intention being something that's not connected with preparation for the festival. Afil bechinam, even if you're doing it for free. If your friend calls you up and says, look, we got to go plant this tree or it's going to die. I'm sorry, I really want to help you. I don't want the tree to die. Water it again. Put it somewhere. But we can't go out in a field and start planting trees a few hours before Passover. Or if your boss says you have to come to work late and work an hour until an hour before Pesach. Well, hopefully that's arranged ahead of time that you don't have to do that and not lose your job. But really, from midday, we want to stop all work that has nothing to do with the festival. We want to have all our focus on what's going to happen in a few hours on Leil HaSeder. The Rav goes on to tell us, we should also get a haircut before midday. It's a common custom and practice that we get a haircut before all festivals and before Shabbat. Interesting, I asked myself, why is it so important to get a haircut? You know, a guy like me doesn't have much to cut. What's the big deal? But there's something that happens when you cut your hair. Because hair is considered from the... Remember, we have the tree of life, we have the life force, and we have the death force. And they're working together in this world. And we are made of those two halves. And hair is from the part of us that's leaving us, so to speak. It's growing out. And although hair contains tremendous amounts of information, as scientists have taught us, nonetheless, it is something that's dying, like fingernails, for example. The fingernail is not considered part of the living body. Hair is not considered part of the living body. So when you get a haircut, you're actually removing a little bit of that power of the other side. And then you feel refined, more clean, more clear. I've seen many people, have come to yeshiva with long dreadlocks and hair out, as wide as their shoulders. And, when you get a haircut after you've had long hair, something changes in the person. And there's many secrets in this. The secret of the Nazir is attached to this idea. The person who grows his hair for Hashem. But for our purposes right now, we just need to understand that getting a haircut is a spiritual thing, if we understand it properly. Right? There should be, a Jew should always get a haircut from someone he trusts, from someone who's not dangerous, from someone who hates him. That's the wrong thing to do. If a guy hates you, don't let him cut your hair because he's got a sharp thing in his hand. Right? Also, it's good to cut the fingernails before the midday. Again, our question, well, why before midday? What's the difference if I get my hair cut and I cut my fingernails before midday or after midday? Why are the rabbis standing me on this point? Again, it's a similar concept because the day, the 24-hour day, according to Kabbalah, is broken into many different sections. And one way is 6 hours before noon, 6 hours after noon, 6 hours before midnight, 6 hours after midnight. Each of those 6-hour periods represent a shift from the life force to the death force. And the life force is in the morning. And so to speak, the decline of the day, the death force is a little bit of a dramatic phrase, excuse me for the afternoon. But as at midday, the energy changes. And it starts the decline towards the end of the day. And towards the end of the day, towards night, is gradually the diminishing of the power of the life force that's coming out of the morning. So we want to cut hair during the period when we are in the strength of the upper soul, the positive soul, the living soul, and not remove hair and fingernails and things like that when we're in the decline of the day because of that shift in the energy. Now, this is a very refined level, and it's not everybody's going to believe this or want to do this or take this to heart. But even if you don't, you can still get a haircut after midday, okay? You can still cut your fingernails. But it's good to know and to learn these things because it gives us more understanding about the way the universe works and about the structure of the universe that we find ourselves living, okay? Now, we learned also that the firstborn, they have to fast on this day because of the great miracle that God saved the firstborn. On Pesach, the Ben Ish Chai says, "Efilu im kohanim im o leviim mitanim be'erev Pesach." Even the kohanim and the leviim, their firstborns also should fast, whether you're the firstborn of your mother or your father. Okay, the dafka zachrim, and specifically the male children. But the Rav goes on to tell us, aval women, lo nagu litanot. They don't really have a custom to fast as much. Women have a tremendous amount of work and responsibility on their shoulders, Erev Pesach, and the last thing you want to do is make them fast. And, well, we know that fasting can make a person irritable and weak, tired, angry, etc. Okay? But again, we're remembering the fact that God did a genetic miracle on the night that we left Egypt, because on that night, only the firstborn of the Jews were saved. That any other person that was found in Egypt on that night, that was the firstborn of their mother, well, they had to leave that night. They had to go back. Now, it's an interesting idea. You know, if a person died in one of those plagues, like the firstborn, it's not the Egyptian's fault that he's the firstborn of his family. Why does he have to die? Well, we understand that the whole point of this miracle, of the plague of the death of the firstborn, is in memory of what Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, did to the Jewish children, because he threw the firstborn male children into the Nile River. Now, let's say some people don't believe in that. Well, you know, it's an interesting and important point to remember that when I don't believe in something, but everybody else says it's true, or these 16 million Jews say it's true, or whatever the case may be, take the position of a scientist. A scientist does not pass judgment. He's empirical. He examines the evidence before he passes judgment. He doesn't jump to conclusions about any experiment that the scientist is doing. Now, of course, the scientist is dealing with the material world, and we have evidence in front of us of what works and what doesn't work, what things to mix together and what not to. But here we're not talking about the science of the physical world. We're really, in Kabbalah, we're talking about the science of the spiritual world. And that takes time to explore, a lot of time, and a lot of experience. And if you have the time to sit down and learn the books, then I believe that you will receive the illumination that you're after. And if you don't, and if you want to jump to judgments and say, no, this whole Jewish story of getting out of Egypt and the firstborn dying is just a fairy tale, well, then you're obviously not a scientist. You're not a person who is willing to look at the history, at the Sfarim, at the books, at the miracles that are claimed to have happened. So this is a challenge to every person, Jewish or non-Jewish, to accept the Jewish story. Maybe the narrative's wrong. Maybe it's right. Let's go find out. But nowadays, because of all the technology and because of all the archaeological evidence that is out there, they found chariot wheels at the bottom of the Red Sea. Excuse me, of the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea, yes. When they sent down unmanned submarines to the bottom of the sea, they found the round chariot wheels still encrusted in the bottom of the sea. How did those chariot wheels get there? Seems to be that there were some chariots down there, and I doubt that the Egyptians were just throwing over old wheels back into the sea. So, when you have enough evidence, we have to start to really grasp the awesomeness of the Torah, of the Jewish people, of our mission, and of course of the awesomeness of the entire human race, that we are made in the image of God in order to know that we are part of Him. And that knowledge gives the greatest pleasure to our Father in heaven, because what greater pleasure does a father have when your child opens his eyes to look at you and recognizes you and sees you and loves you and appreciates you? That's the greatest pleasure a father can have. And we want to give that pleasure to our Father in heaven. We're going to take another short break and be back and learn some Likutei Moharan of Rabbi Nachman.